just the right way at the perfect time. Previously, I talked a great deal about trust and about this knowing and about shifting your perceptions out of this idea that somehow you are separate from the divine intelligence that is universal. The obvious thing to remember about a universal intelligence is that if it's universal, it is in all places. Therefore, it is in all that you want and all that you are. And so manifesting is the ability to realign your intention with that divine intelligence and know that it will show up. But one of the things that we have a tendency to do as individuals is to become impatient. Our ego says to us, I want what I want, and I want it now. And we have a tendency to try to tell the universal intelligence, or to tell God, or the metaphor that I used earlier as God is like the ocean and we are like a glass. And so we are really a glass of God, if you will. We are a piece of God. But when you separate yourself, one little drop of water separated from the ocean alone literally can't make anything happen, is very weak and so on. And it is only when you unite yourself with that ocean, when that drop of water becomes united with the ocean, it can do anything. It is part of the universal. When you unite yourself with this divine intelligence instead of separating yourself from it, then you know that this ocean will provide. It will provide for you in precisely the right way that it is supposed to, and in exactly the right time. There's a wonderful poet that I have quoted in this program several times, and I want to quote him again. His name is Rumi. Well, Rumi wrote back in the early part of the 13th century. His poetry is still quoted today, and it's something that I would recommend you look at. Jalaluddin Rumi. And he had a poem that is called The Servant Who Loved His Prayers. And I'd like to share that with you as I talk about this idea of detaching from the outcome and letting go of your need to make something happen as you demand it to happen. It's called The Servant Who Loved His Prayers. At dawn, a certain rich man wanted to go to the steam bath. He woke his servant, Sunquar. Ho, get moving, get the basin and the towels and the clay for washing, and let's go to the bath. Sunquar immediately collected what was needed, and they set out side by side along the road. As they passed the mosque, the call to prayer sounded. Sunquar loved his 5 times prayer. Please, Master, rest on this bench for a while, that I may recite Surah 98, which begins, You who treat your slave with kindness. The Master sat on the bench outside, while Sunquar went in. When prayers were over and the priest and all the worshippers had left, still Sunquar remained inside. The Master waited and waited. Finally he yelled into the mosque, Sunquar, why don't you come out? I can't. This clever one won't let me out. Have a little more patience. I hear you out there. 7 times the Master waited, and then shouted. Sunquar's reply was always the same. Not yet. He won't let me come out yet. But there's no one in there but you. Everyone else is left. Who makes you sit still so long? The one who keeps me in here is the one who keeps you out there. The same who will not let you in will not let me out. The ocean will not allow its fish out of itself, nor does it let land animals in where the subtle and delicate fish move. The land creatures lumber along on the ground. No cleverness can change this. There's only one opener for the lock of these matters. Forget your figuring. Forget yourself. Listen to your friend. When you become totally obedient to that one, you'll be free. Rumi. And this idea of knowing that that divine intelligence will work in exactly the order and the preference and the time that it is supposed to. In the Course in Miracles, there's this often quoted passage that says, infinite patience produces immediate results. And it sounds like it's a contradiction, doesn't it? It sounds like a paradox. If I'm patient, infinitely patient, then I will have to wait a very long time. You know, I talked earlier about these tomato seeds that we used to plant and how the essence of tomato-ness was in every aspect of that tomato. And yet that very essence was something that isn't in the physical world at all. The cause of tomato, as we discover and we look at those seeds and we look at the dust that's in the seeds and then we try to find out what's in the dust, and ultimately we find out that there's just an energy in there. There's just a wave. There's something that's invisible to the naked eye. There's something that doesn't even exist in a physical world. There are no particles at all. You see, when you're a child, you think like a child, as it says in Corinthians 13. And I can remember as a child when those tomato shoots surfaced above the ground sometime in June, back there in Mount Clemens, and they would come up about 4 or 5 inches above the ground. I remember one time getting down there and looking at those tomato shoots and trying to hurry them along. And I got down on my knees and I started tugging at them as a little boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And I remember Mrs. Scarf saying, no, you can't do that. And I was like trying to hurry it along. And this idea of attempting to hurry along the divine intelligence is something that we do with our egos all the time. Obviously, creation reveals its secrets by and by, as it is supposed to, as it is ordained. And when you get down there and start tugging at those shoots and I remember pulling at one, and I pulled one just a little bit too hard because they're still not firmly entrenched. They don't have very long roots, tomato plants. You can pull them out with hardly any effort at all. And I pulled one right out into my hand, and that was the end of that tomato. There was no possibility because I was attempting to do something that interferes. This principle of detaching ourselves from outcome, along with having infinite patience, is really essential to your manifestation process. It is inconsistent with what we have a tendency to think is the way things should be working. Because if I do everything that I'm supposed to, if I follow all of these principles and I set down all of the rules and I get it all organized, then I expect that I'll have results. That's the time in our lives that I referred to earlier in the very first principle of being the warrior, going from the athlete to the warrior. That's the time in our lives when we set our goals. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals. I've written about it and talked about it on many programs right here at Nightingale Conant and in many of my books. But the idea of thinking that setting goals and then just going about and having them show up is still the thinking that keeps us sort of stuck back at the warrior phase of our development. It inhibits us from moving to higher places wherein we can begin to manage the coincidences of our lives, which sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? If it's a coincidence, you can't manage it. If you're managing it, then it's not a coincidence. But when you begin to transcend some of these paradoxes, when you reach a higher level. So setting goals is one thing, and it's something that we do in the earlier stages of our spiritual development. And we continue to do it. And these stages that I talked about earlier are not things that we go into and then never go back to. We go back, we come out of it, we go back. We're always moving in and out of these stages. The question is, what is my primary emphasis? is my primary emphasis not only on setting goals, but in falling in love with those goals, and then insisting that those goals show up when I want them to show up. That is inconsistent with manifestation and with spirituality and higher consciousness. What you have to do is have your goals, which is what a tomato seed is. It's really a goal for tomatoes. But you have to then relax and turn your thoughts and your ideas and your consciousness and your awareness to your own purpose and know in your heart that it will manifest. You see, the key to relaxing about what it is that you would like to see manifested is the certainty of the outcome. If you have a certainty, as it says in the Course in Miracles, if you have a certainty of the outcome, patience is easy. If you are uncertain of the outcome, if you're not sure how it's going to work out, or if things are going to fall into place the way you would like them to, if you have that uncertainty, then you will not be able to be patient. So patience, infinite patience, is really like a trusting in God. And when you trust in God, you're trusting in the wisdom that created you. And when you trust in the wisdom that created you, you're trusting in yourself as well. Because you can never be separate from that wisdom. So patience and trust and awareness and higher consciousness are absolutely essential.